Guinea-Bissau is navigating a delicate political period, with recent developments raising questions about leadership, stability, governance, and the country's broader role in West African security and economic affairs. These shifts have drawn close attention from ECOWAS and the international community, highlighting concerns over potential power vacuums, institutional resilience, and regional spillover effects. To provide context and insight into the evolving situation and to unpack what these changes mean for citizens, investors, and neighboring states, we're joined right here in our Lagos studio by Achike Chude, who is a global affairs analyst, and he'll assess the political landscape, the drivers behind the current developments, and their implications for the region. Good afternoon. Many thanks for being here.
Yeah, good afternoon. It's a pleasure.
Oh, fantastic. Now, tell us about all the factors that are in play that are causing Guinea-Bissau to pass through this difficult moment that it's experiencing.
Well, I mean, Guinea-Bissau has always been in this moment. For quite some time, it's one of the most unstable countries in the sub-region. Notorious for coups, either successful or attempted coups. And of course, serious economic instability, youth unemployment. It has also become a haven for the drug trade. And you find a situation where key institutions of the state have been weakened over the years. And then where you also have state actors and non-state actors being involved seriously in the drug trade. And of course, you know that even when the coup, or this alleged coup, attempted coup, some would describe it as a palace coup, took place, that there are those who had insinuated that in fact, even the coupists, when they were making their national broadcast, also brought the drug issue into the fray. So you have a situation where the political class in Guinea-Bissau has not exactly lived up to expectation. Constant bickerings, and even instances where you once seem to have a government, in place. At the end of the day, we had this constant friction between the assembly and then the executive. And so that led to a lot of crises, because we had a situation where the president, of that is Mbalo himself, had issues with the media, and with the assembly itself, and then several times had issues with them, and then had to suspend the assembly, and so that became a problem, and then led to further problems that eventually led to this coup. So it's not just one situation, but a multiplicity of problems in Guinea-Bissau. Like I said, the political instability, the behavior of non-state actors also have played roles in bringing about this unfortunate incidents of military coup. And now there are all manners of diverse issues as a result. The international community are not taking it lying down. The ECOWAS as a body, has also threatened, and they talked about a return to democratization, to the democratic rule. And then the African Union also has followed suit. The international community and everybody is contemplating all manners of sanctions to bring to bear, on Guinea-Bissau. So Guinea-Bissau, to a large extent, is on tenterhooks. They cannot move forward, and then, of course, they cannot stand still, because there are basic expectations that they are expected to also, conform with. So this is exactly where they are now.
Now, of course, when we look at Guinea-Bissau, we know that Mbalo has survived numerous coup attempts. He's almost like a cat with 9 lives, if you want to say that. And I want to link this to what you mentioned about ECOWAS not taking this lightly. The criticism has always been that ECOWAS usually doesn't say much when it comes to sit-tight leaders, but all hands are usually on deck when we see coups. And so what role should ECOWAS be playing directly with this situation, that it's, as opposed to condemning and saying we want a return to democracy? What kind of democracy are we talking about?
ECOWAS is as complicit as even the people who themselves are embarking on anti-democratic practices. Look, I have always tried to hold brief for the ECOWAS. When ECOWAS had challenges with Niger, with Mali, with Burkina Faso, with Guinea, you saw the flurry of activities, diplomatic activities by the ECOWAS, to try to bring these countries back to the path of constitutionalism and democratization and all that, setting time frames for these, movements towards democratization and all that. So, and we saw the effort, we saw the movement, even though at the end of the day, nothing really was achieved, so because of their lack of successes, others became emboldened.
That's right.
Because rather than the interventions by ECOWAS discouraging the coupists, we had more coups taking place in other countries. That meant that ECOWAS had become a shark that is worse than that's not worse than his back. That's worse than his back. And was not able to do anything to effect any meaningful change. All they were doing was just dialogues and dialogues. So once they realized that ECOWAS did not have anything on the table to compel them to obedience, it became, something that every other country, every other military adventurist could, contemplate and then go and do whatever they wanted to do. And that's what we have been seeing. But beyond that, again, is that they say he who goes to equity must come with clean hands. And I'm not sure that the members of ECOWAS are people with clean hands. You look at them all over. The coup that did not succeed in Benin Republic, for instance, the man there, the president had tinkered with the tenure, with his tenure and elongated his tenure. We also have the same thing with Alassane Ouattara, one of the major proponents against military adventurism. Had also removed the term limit for himself, obviously for himself and all that. So Bio of Sierra Leone, we have also seen that this is somebody that has been sympathetic to coupists in the past because he's from that tradition and all that. So what do they bring to the table? This has been the issue. And then so there is this, it has become very noticeable that ECOWAS says something and is not able to enforce it, and even again, and for people who make the argument that yes, ECOWAS hates military dictators, perhaps they do, but there is a problem, but they have no problem with civilian dictators, and of course that putting on civilian clothing has nothing to do with the democratization issue, because some of the worst dictators in Africa have been civilians. Mobutu Sese Seko, Jean-Bede Bokassa, and so on. So even if they were formerly military generals, they transmute and become civilian, leaders, and there is no change. The only change is in the cloth that they wear. So it's what we have seen in ECOWAS, and until ECOWAS is able to look itself in the mirror and realize that there is something fundamental about the regional body and the acceptance of some of these things that are going on. You just have a group of dictators in military, clothing, and then you also have those in uniform, and then you feel that, well, one dictator is better than the other. Well, I don't know, a dictator is a dictator. That's because right. A dictator does not follow the norms. A dictator does not, even when you say the military comes in, they set aside the constitution. But the civilians might not have done exactly the same thing, but they tinker with the constitution in a way that does irreparable damage to democratic institutions. And so that's what you have. That's why virtually all of these countries, you have, weak institutions.
Speaking of weak institutions, we have, when you look at Guinea-Bissau, the country's institutions are just as weak when it comes to parliament, judiciary, military. When you pair this with every other factor that's at play right now, what are the first, let's just narrow it down to first 3 steps that need to be taken for Guinea-Bissau to emerge relatively victorious from this situation?
Well, the issue is that they have done something that they shouldn't do. They have, interfered in the democratic, in the political process in Guinea-Bissau. They have no business because, military dictatorship or military is an aberration to democracy. So the first thing that has to be done is that there has to be a path to democratization. And that is where you expect the ECOWAS and then the African Union. That's where you want them to be involved, to engage with them in the process of democratization. But are they going to be able to do that? Because these were the same conversations that took place with Burkina Faso, with Guinea, with Mali, and it did not yield any result. But eventually that led to that led to these other countries removing themselves completely from the sub-regional body completely. So it did not, and I don't know whether this can yield efforts. Perhaps the one way of looking at, perhaps if the president of the Nigerian president, the ECOWAS has declared a state of emergency in West Africa. Perhaps, and it was on the basis of that they intervened in Benin Republic. Perhaps they can also use that, because the issue of having an emergency is, I'm not sure in any of the documents of ECOWAS you have that as a state of, what does it mean, what's the implication and all that. So perhaps that might also, having been successful relatively in Benin Republic, that might lead them to also embark on a military exercise in Guinea-Bissau. And they might succeed. Why are they going to succeed? Because these countries are not Burkina Faso. Yeah. They are not Guinea. They are very small countries with what's the strength of their national army. When the ECOWAS, under the Obasanjo administration, issued a deadline on Yahya Jammeh of Gambia, issued a deadline that otherwise there would be military intervention, he had no choice than to cave in. Why was he? How many soldiers has he got? What is the strength of his of his military? It's almost non-existent. So there are some countries that you can threaten and force them to go to the path of democracy, and they have no choice. You might not be able to do that with Guinea. You might not be able to do that with countries like maybe Burkina Faso and all that, looking at their land borders and the rest. So for Benin too, it was very, very easy. In fact, the success of the Nigerian government was not based on the fact that Nigeria is a very strong, of course, compared to Benin Republic, Nigeria is a great power, it's a superpower. But when you have to contend with other countries, maybe within the sub-region, you realize that the dynamics change and they are not the same. So they might use a strong-handed tactics on Guinea-Bissau. I don't know, but perhaps if they do, it's going to succeed, because they do not have the kind of army that can withstand any assault from ECOWAS. But how long will it continue? Good governance is the solution, is the key to some of these coups that are taking place. But the ECOWAS does not want to address the issue of bad governance. They don't. As far as they are concerned, it has become a boys' club. So anybody can do whatever they want to do. And because there are signs that are there. Do you understand?
Indeed.
Lastly, let me just say that we have a party in Nigeria, for instance, where you have a situation where virtually every governor in the country is moving to the national party. And they are boasting and they are telling us that they have 2/3 members of governors in their party. They have 2/3 of the National Assembly, of members of National Assembly. They have 2/3 in all the states in the country. So when you have all of this, where do you want to go with it? These are warning signs, and then that might not be good for democracy.
Definitely not good for democracy, and it's very clear that ECOWAS has a lot of housekeeping to do. Thank you so much for your robust analysis. Global Affairs Analyst Achike Chude, lovely having you here as always. Thank you.